Well, time now for Social Watch, and you know when it's time for Social Watch, my mic goes off and your voice comes on. We want to sample some of the feedback that you've sent to us. Definitely, we've been asking you and to engage with us on our social media platforms at Metropol TV KE across all our digital platforms, at Ndiro Ganga, at IEA Kwame. And we've been asking you since we began the show, share your thoughts, share your comments, share your feedback and your questions, and we'll be answering to some of them. And now is the time. Remember, the hashtag to use is at Metropol Debrief. To those who are just joining in, welcome, and you can catch us on Facebook and on YouTube Live. Let's start by looking at some of the feedback you sent us. Where do we start? We had posed the poll on Instagram, and we had asked you, do you feel job secure at your current workplace? 25% said yes, 75% said no. Let's take a look at what you people were saying. Let's take a look at what the 75 encompassed and the 25 encompassed. Let's take a look at the first response, please. Okay, there you have it. At Jackie_M says no, too many layoffs going around. Also, businesses are not doing well. Numbers are down, profit is nearly nil, and losses are looming. I think this is something that sits well with what you said. Yeah. Let's take a look at the next one. There you have it. At Lillian Musavi says, no, digitization is fast catching pace. Evolve or die. Most of us will be rendered redundant with the incoming technology of artificial intelligence and robotics. Do you think that when we are training our workforce, we need to train them in a way that they are conversant and they can survive in the changing technological eras?
Yes, you should, but I think we have to be careful, Lillian, by claiming that there are some things that machines do well. And I hear, of course, we are in the era of algorithms. They're not as smart as we give them credit for.
Yes.
I think there are some things they can do well. There are some things that people will continue to do much, much better. And for that reason, the human person will still have an advantage on others. But yes, the point about the fact that the nature of work in the next generation will be very different from the one that someone like myself has had, where you sit in an office necessarily and do incremental things every day, is definitely out there. But human beings will adjust. When economies grow through those, there'll be new opportunities for people to do many more things. And what that means is we'll be required to be people who have range. You're not necessarily focused on only a single thing which a machine can do repeatedly.
Yes.
But there are things that, there are some tasks that machines can do. But in terms of doing things that involve thinking, making judgments, I think the human person will still have good chance to compete.
Okay, Lillian, you're still safe, so breathe easy. Let's take a look at another comment right here. At Joel Minayo says, yes, I am a government employee, permanent and pensionable. If the 3-year contracts are not introduced, then I am safe.
Yeah, I mean, that's the nature of public sector employment in Kenya. Once you get in and you behave yourself, you're assured of two things. You're assured of promotions every second or third year. You're assured of a wage increment, and at the same time, your job is safe up to until your retirement. So yes, if you work in the public sector, you work under completely different work conditions from those who work in places where changes take place more rapidly.
Okay, let's take a look at another. Okay. At Yala Asego says, the cost of production in Kenya is incredibly high. Whatever goes in running and operating a business does not leave room for reasonable profit. Investors and businessmen can only be patient for too long.
I think that's true. I mean, that's part of the reason that we have big firms that are relocating some of their operations from Kenya into the neighborhood, but also outside there. So yes, I think it's a warning to government to think about what kind of work environment do we want. It's not necessarily that we should have the cheapest labor, because there are rights to people who work in the labor force in Kenya.
Yeah.
I think we also have trade unions, which is a good thing. They must negotiate reasonably, but it's also true that for us to understand that there's competition and there are alternatives. So if we provide if we provide a labor environment in which people can't create jobs and still make profits, then the possibility of relocation to other places will happen.
Well, there you have it. Let's take a look at another. At Callisto Scully says, no, there has been restructuring at my workplace, presumably due to rather tough economic times, through which a number of people are already said to be sent home. This is warning enough.
I mean, that's a sad case in the sense that the culmination of the difficult environment that people are in is such that some people are actually going home, not because of their fault, but because the business needs to survive. And if it needs to survive, the easiest cost to usually shift is the cost related to labor. So they actually decide to adjust that by making some people go. It's sad, but it happens.
Okay. Where do we head to after this? So this is WhatsApp, and Nancy Igalo says, no, I am a county government worker. Truth is, with the on and off ego wars between the national and county governments, I don't feel secure since I wait for my salary with bated breath.
Obviously, that too is it. It's one thing to have a job, but obviously, as you say, the decisions that the national government has made, I mean, national and county governments have made, or rather, the National Assembly together with the Senate, their difference around the division of revenue means that many counties have not received their money. I don't think that's necessarily the right way to go, but today the courts say that this should be negotiated. So yes, those who work for counties are wondering whether they'll still be able to receive their money in time. So you work, but you're not paid. So that's also an added risk, especially for the fact that counties are hugely dependent on their share of revenue that comes from the national collections. So
no, I mean, but the court says it's a political problem.
Yes.
Find a political solution.
Precisely.
But the politician bring their egos on the table, and hence negotiation is not possible. Yet it's people like Nancy Gallo at the county level who are offering their services and suffering.
Yes, and I think your voice needs to come out and tell politicians we are watching. I mean, the unreasonable posture that, in my view, the National Assembly has taken, for instance, trying to humiliate the Senate, is not useful for a negotiation, certainly. I mean, money doesn't grow on trees and it needs to be negotiated, but obviously trying to humiliate one another will ensure that this goes much longer. And for the time being, it might be counties that are actually going to suffer, but the moment they are not able to work and provide those services, there'll be a serious backlash that might affect everybody throughout that cycle, all the way to the presidency. So I think we need to be more measured about the way we discuss this political issue. But the courts were right. This is a political discussion that should be kept away from the courts as much as is possible. Okay,
let's take a look at another reaction here on WhatsApp. At Liam Minor says, yes, we have diversified our stock, widened our market reach, and done proper studies on our target demographic. Thus, business is good.
Yes, that's one of the ways in which businesses adjust. So as they can, of course, you do not wait, you do not stay like a deer in the headlights. You try to, as you say, diversify your stock, widen the market outreach and done proper studies. So basically, it's also an opportunity for growth. As we said when it started, is that at all times businesses are trying to find new ways to actually make sure that they are at least 1 or 2 steps ahead from any shock that might take place. So Minor here is telling us about how the business he works for has been doing that. So that's a good thing. But basically all of it is nobody's going to stay in the same place and hope to survive.
Let's take a look at another response from WhatsApp. At Nate Othaya says, no, I work in the real estate sector. Banks are not lending to us, and if they do, the conditions are unbelievable. The cost of investment has shot, thus the cost of property, yet the market is slow. The credit crunch.
Yes. Part of that is the credit crunch, but I think also banks are looking at, over the medium term, their belief for most of them is that there's too much real estate, and obviously the occupancy is not taking place. Some of the mortgages that are out there are not being serviced because it's because people have lost their jobs or because businesses are doing poorly. So yes, it's both a supply and demand side factor, and obviously it's having effects on the real estate sector as he reports.
Any other that we might take a look? This was from Nate at Galgayo says, no. So the company makes profit, but poor corporate governance will be the end of it.
As we said, some of them are also internal, as we talked about the East African Portland Company. If you're a company that is paying its workers above premium rates, and yet you're losing 8 million shillings per day, that's obviously prudence on the part of the management and on the part of the governance. So it's a corporate governance thing.
Where do we head over now to Twitter? Okay, at John Kanini says, to some extent, yes. Why? Because I am patient zero. The first real employee, so I set the work standards.
Okay, that's a good one. I mean, people are keeping sharp. That's
yes. Staying sharp at the workplace.
Staying sharp at the workplace.
Okay. So where do we head to from now? This is a response by Joan Kanini, which we have just sampled right now. Let's see if we can head over to Twitter and see if there's some responses from there. Okay, technical hitches, our screen has frozen, so we can't head out to Twitter. But I'd like us to kind of come to a close of this conversation.
Yes.
And you brought up a very pertinent issue. We have big spending, we have money,
yes,
but we are spending big and looks like we are not putting our money where our mouth is. Where exactly? You know, there are once
yes,
big projects that will make us look flamboyant, but what exactly does this country need to restore sanity and balance in the economy?
Okay, because we are talking about jobs, the real jobs are actually in the private sector.
Yes.
The government provides many jobs, to be honest, but it cannot employ everyone. And for as long as private sector jobs are not growing, we'll continue to have this crisis. Government needs to get out of the way of the private sector. I think our tax rates, to be honest, appear to be a little bit too high. So giving a breather by cutting 1 or 2 percentage points would not harm anyone, especially it would reinvigorate companies. Those facing very narrow margins, for instance, will be able to actually have some breather and do that. So that's the one. The second is just the quality of public services. Government, or rather, public sector firms still rely on the same services that government provides, whether it's good roads and all that. It is not as if we haven't spent that money, but we've spent them in the most ineffective ways so that we have those roads. Not all of them are complete, fine, they're much, much better, but the cost of running on them, obvious. If you think about manufacturing farms, we have the standard gauge railway, which was argued that it was going to make them more efficient. Right now, it has actually introduced so many more bottlenecks that companies are actually having to cut their own margins to continue to operate.
And
it cannot go like that forever.
Higher than road transport.
Precisely. So if it's higher, which means companies that are trying to compete and markets are opening up globally and in the region, you are already loading on them an extra 30%, which they didn't have to run, while at the same time trying to run trucks which have been running on the roads aground. That's not good decision making.
Yeah. Parting shot, 30 seconds. Which camera to Biko?
Which is this?
Go ahead.
Oh, okay. Well, I think there's a culmination of the fact that, look, businesses have suffered. At the same time, government has not provided the reliefs that are required for them to continue to operate competitively. Because of that, many of them are doing the only thing that's available to them right now, cutting jobs. I think it's time for government to sit up, and especially the cabinet secretary, and ask themselves, what do we need to adjust? This is not a problem that you can settle by more spending. This is a problem that requires reducing the burdens that business suffer from and providing for a lean and more efficient government.
Kwame Owino, thank you very much for making time.
Thank you.
But before we leave, we always have to speak the truth to each other. Imagine you live in a country where you're being told if you're operating your own business, self-employed, you can do it from the house and you don't have to pay taxes or any licenses. That is Botswana. Imagine living in a country where systems work. You land at the airport, you can be able to get your business permits in a day, you can be able to get your licenses. The cost of labor is cheap. The cost of energy has been subsidized, and every other government function works as it should. That is Ethiopia. Imagine living and working in a country where if you bring foreign travel into the country or foreign clients into the country, 20% off from your business in terms of tax reliefs. That is Rwanda for you. Imagine living in those countries and doing businesses in those countries. Now stop imagining and come back to your country, which is Kenya. Have a good evening. Hello there, my name is Ndiro Ganga. Did you enjoy this episode of Metropol Debrief? Well, click next to watch more. Also, remember to subscribe. The button is down.